Kia ora, good morning. Welcome to Herald Now. I'm Ryan Bridge. It is Tuesday, the 10th of June. Coming up on the program this morning, our reputation as a corruption-free nation on the rocks this morning. A new report showing how the tentacles of organised crime are spreading through our lives and our government. How bad is it really? We'll speak to the report author. Finally, some good news from Ukraine. Jubilant scenes, a prisoner swap with Russia. The Ukrainian ambassador to New Zealand and Australia is live at the desk for reaction this morning. And signs of a cranking season on the slopes. We've got two ski field operators on the show. Fresh pictures as well of the powder in Queenstown. Plus, Labour leader Chris Hipkins, Louisa Wall on the panel today. Trump's joking about arresting Gavin Newsom, which is just so funny. Plus, Sweden's most annoying celebrity, Greta Thunberg. The latest on her too. Right now, let's get to news with Neva.
Herald Now News. Powered by Newstalk ZB.
Experts are urging the government to take immediate action against corruption from organised crime. An independent advisory panel says New Zealand is naive to the threat of corruption and must act to protect its reputation. In a new report to Customs and Associate Police Minister Casey Costello, it lays out several recommendations. It includes establishing a central authority to investigate corruption, modernising laws, longer prison sentences, and stronger vetting of employees in high-risk industries. The government's pumping more funding into tourism marketing, with a goal of generating an extra $300 million in spending. Minister Louise Upston's announced a $13.5 million injection into Tourism New Zealand, targeting Australia, the US and China. It's expected to bring an extra 72,000 visitors over coming years. Rotorua Mayor Tanya Tapsell told Ryan Bridge the spending goal's easily achievable.
Chinese visitors, their average spend is $6,000 when they do come here. That's why they are a target market for us. They're very high spenders.
More people are dipping into their Kiwi Saver accounts for financial hardship reasons. Inland revenue figures show more than 44,000 people withdrew money between July 2024 and April 2025. That's compared to about 32,000 in the previous financial year. Financial mentor David Very says while it should be a last resort, about half the people he talks to want to do a Kiwi Saver hardship withdrawal. Deportation protests in Los Angeles are dispersing after 3 days of violent unrest. City and state leaders are accusing Donald Trump of deliberately inflaming tensions after he deployed the National Guard to fire tear gas and rubber bullets at demonstrators. At least 56 people have been arrested. Australian Channel 9 journalist Lauren Tomasi was caught in the crossfire, shot with a rubber bullet on air.
Firing rubber bullets at protesters. You just shot the You okay? I'm good.
Tomasi was not seriously hurt. A renewed call for people to vaccinate as the cold weather brings forth a range of infectious diseases. The national rate for acute respiratory illness infections climbed to 21 per 100,000 people in the week ending June 1st. Vaccinologist Dr. Helen Patousas-Harris says flu, COVID-19 and whooping cough are all in the air right now. She says pneumococcal is also one to watch for.
It gets very chummy with the influenza virus. So influenza viruses can actually predispose people from getting very ill, for example, with severe pneumonias and things.
From today, Aucklanders can begin checking out their council property valuations. New capital values are being issued this week for 630,000 properties across the region. On average, home values dropped 9% from CVs released in 2021.
Herald Now Sport. Brought to you by Gold Sport.
Canterbury have beaten Parramatta 30-12 in League's NRL to return to the top of the ladder. The Magic have defeated the Stars 71-54 to complete round 5 of netball's ANZ Premiership. Usman Khawaja believes Marnus Labuschagne can don the pads first in Australia's World Test Championship cricket final, starting tomorrow against South Africa at Lords, despite once claiming he had opening-itis.
Thanks, Neva. It has just gone 3 minutes after 7. Did anyone watch the news of Greta and just roll your eyes? Honestly, Greta, get a grip, please.
My name is Greta Thunberg and I am from Sweden. If you see this video, we have been intercepted and kidnapped in international waters.
Thing about this is it's a stunt, right? She's sailing on a yacht with a diesel engine, by the way, which they've been using because the sails haven't been up. So we know this. There've been photos and video of Greta doing a Titanic moment on the bow. Her merciful mission to save the Middle East on board the vessel that comes complete with aircon, apparently TVs, and of course Instagram. As for being kidnapped, this must be the first time the victim of a kidnapping has broadcast their own hostage video. How does that work? It's a tiny yacht anyway. How much aid can you realistically have on board? There's no doubt that Palestinians desperately need aid because of Israel's inhumane blockade. Unfortunately, they're not going to get any from this attention-obsessed Swede, are they? This is the problem I think people have with protesters. Not the ones who protest and then go and do something useful, like become a scientist or invest in a solution, invent a solution to climate change or global warming. Protesters who protest for the sake of it and change their causes with the wind. One day it's climate and oil and the house is burning down, and the next it's powering through the Med on a diesel-laden yacht to rescue Gaza. Hypocrisy knows no bounds, celebrities have no shame, and Gaza, sadly this morning, is still hungry. Here's weather.
Herald Now weather, brought to you by You Do It Kitchens.
Good morning. Many around the country waking to fog. It does clear. We have a narrow ridge of high pressure today, but this front will start to pass over the lower North Island, and the low out over the Tasman Sea is also approaching, but it stays west for now. So to the South Island, and fine and frosty or fine and foggy, cloud will start to creep in during the afternoon with mostly light winds. Cloud spreads to all here, then drizzle, then rain arriving tonight for everyone. Maybe a few heavy falls too for Nelson. Only 10 the high today for Christchurch. Many waking with frost this morning. It's not a bad start to the day, but cloud does increase and any showers will turn to rain tonight, possibly thundery too for Taranaki. It's a similar trend here with a fine morning, then cloud rolls in, turning to rain tonight. Thunderstorms possible for Tauranga, Tokoroa and also Rotorua. And rain spreads to all here from late morning. There could be more thunderstorms too, with hail, and the north or northeasterly wind will be gusty in those thunderstorms, potentially up to 100 k's for Auckland.
Yeah, a bit of fog delaying flights at Auckland Airport this morning. We'll keep you up to date with that. Nothing major at the moment, just gone 6 after 7. If you're watching us on YouTube or on the Herald website, it's great to have your company. A new report out this morning on corruption in New Zealand and the Pacific suggests organised crime is not only present in New Zealand and corrupting officials here, but expanding. Joining us now is Steve Simon, Chair of the Ministerial Advisory Group on Organised Crime, appointed by Casey Costello. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to have you on the show. I've had a read of this report, and there are examples that you go through, you know, your baggage handlers being corrupted and the drugs coming in. Is this, you know, a few examples spread over a few years? Are you saying we have a major problem with corruption, or do we not have enough information, enough data?
Both. I can say that because when we talk to the most senior police officials, the most senior customs officials who are dealing with those cases on a day-to-day basis, they say the vast majority of large-scale drug imports that are coming through are being facilitated by an insider. So that means if we see a news story today of a large-scale drug import at Auckland Airport or Tauranga Port, most likely that's been done by the use of an insider.
How do they get contact with that insider?
How do the organised crime groups get in contact with these border officials in New Zealand and corrupt them? How does that work? They're following a pattern which has been used overseas. So a lot of what we're seeing is looking at what happened to Australia some 10 years ago and watching crystal ball gazing as to what's going to happen here. They will approach those who are in trusted positions, such as baggage handlers or other people who can work in customs controlled areas. They'll approach them outside of their work. They will offer them money, and often if those are people who are in trusted but low paying jobs, they're very vulnerable. And then they'll use that to, in the same way as you would see with any other type of organised crime, slowly influence that person until they can use their position to their advantage. You talk in the report about a whole bunch of recommendations to deal with this. You say, you know, we're not taking it seriously enough. We're kind of in this false sense of security where we think we're, you know, unbribable. Yeah. But what about money? I mean, you mentioned the main motivation from reading this report seems to be monetary. Yes.
Are our customs officials paid enough? They're amongst the lowest paid of all government departments. Would that help?
Certainly, one tool would be paying people more in the jobs that are valuable at the border, recognising the role that they play. But there's a fiscal reality to that. What we also need to do is kind of have a complete response. So what we need to do is look at the way we vet people going into those jobs, have ongoing vetting to make sure that they're not becoming more vulnerable, say a change in life circumstances. And we also need to limit the opportunities they have, take away the risk that they might use their access card to get into a controlled area or give that to a friend, limit those opportunities so we can reduce the risks of crime happening.
For those people who are watching this morning and thinking, this guy is overcooking this, you know, we're amongst the safest on the corruption index. What do you say to them?
I've been a Crown prosecutor for 20 years. I'm working on a committee with John Timms, who was our Deputy Commissioner of Police. We've got a team that's working together who have dealt with this for a very long time, and what we're seeing now is some of the worst it's ever been. We're seeing ourselves go from number 1 on the corruption index, trending down to number 4 and continuing to trend downward. We're seeing our wastewater results peaking to results we've never seen before. So when we hear and talk to people like our police commissioner, who tells us from his experience working in Interpol in Europe, and he said, New Zealanders are naive to this threat. He's probably right, and so we're starting to see that.
Appreciate your time this morning. Thanks so much for coming in. That's the Steve Simon, chair of the Ministerial Advisory Group on Organised Crime. This is the group that Casey Costello set up to advise her on actions to crack down on organised crime. This is their third report out this morning. It is 10 after 7 now. If you've got anything to say about any of the topics we're talking about, flick me an email, ryan@nzherald.co.nz. That's ryan@nzherald.co.nz. We would love your feedback this morning. New images have been released this morning of a prisoner swap between Russia and Ukraine. These are Ukrainian soldiers, mostly wounded and under the age of 25, who were handed back by Russia. Neither side will say how many soldiers have been swapped exactly. The Russians say a similar number of their men were also returned. It's nice to see some smiles on some faces amidst what has been a bloody and horrific war. It's the first of a series of planned prisoner swaps. Joining me this morning is Vasyl Moroshenko, who's the Ukraine ambassador to Australia and New Zealand. Good morning, lovely to have you on the program.
Good morning, Ryan.
Great to have you. What is your reaction seeing those pictures?
Well, look, it's extremely relieving to see Ukrainian soldiers being released. As you know, Russians are also keeping lots of civilians who they just grabbed and put them in jails. So certainly a swap of them in a humanitarian kind of mission is a good step forward.
They don't look particularly healthy though, do they? That's one of the first things I noticed when I was watching that.
Well, imagine being there for a year.
Yeah. What does this tell us? I mean, it's something. It's obviously not a ceasefire, it's not a peace deal, but it's something. Does it give you hope at all?
No, it doesn't, because it doesn't look like there is a ceasefire, or there might be a ceasefire. We have accepted the proposal from President Donald Trump for a ceasefire on the 11th of March, and we have offered that to Russia, and they haven't accepted that. 2 months later, they've just sent more missiles, they've just sent more drones to kill more Ukrainians, to destroy more infrastructure. So Russians are pretending they're negotiating, but they are not. They're just imitating that. They believe the time is on their side. They're now advancing, or trying to advance, looking for a breakthrough in different parts of Ukraine. So only unity in strength, only pressure, only further isolation of Russia can force them into negotiating in good faith.
Is Europe holding up its end of the bargain on that front? And New Zealand was part of this, reportedly part of this coalition that was coming together to try and force Russia's hand. How successful is that? Clearly not very.
It's actually the involvement of the US which is crucial in this. So we need to make sure that US is involved. Europe is involved, New Zealand, Australia are involved. Coalition of the willing is a very important mechanism of a potential deployment of troops or as peacekeeping missions. But for the time being, while the war is in full speed, it's kind of difficult to even talk about it because we can't have a framework unless we have a ceasefire.
Ceasefire first. So what about the role of China in all of this? I've spoken to a couple of experts over the last couple of weeks who say the one guy who could probably call this off tomorrow would be Xi Jinping. Do you agree with that?
100%.
So what do we do about that? And what about New Zealand's pressure on China, of which there's been, as far as I'm aware, none?
Look, China is a superpower, and China is the biggest military in the region. It's the biggest economy in the region, and everybody depends on China. Ukraine is interested in engaging with China at a great extent. They're buying lots of our iron ore, they buy our grain, we buy fertilizer, we buy other products, so we are trading with China. We've seen recently the Chinese citizens there. But at the same time, we see Xi Jinping going to Moscow to support Putin. We see basically dependence of Russia on the Chinese market, on the supplies of the parts for the defense industry. So and China is benefiting from this war from a geopolitical view because Russia is getting weak. They've asserted themselves in Central Asia. And of course, China could play a bigger role in this whole thing, certainly.
Okay, what about, and presumably some pressure from little old New Zealand could help on that front. What about the taking the war further inside Russia, as Ukraine has been doing quite successfully of late? Do you think we will see more of that, like the drone strikes on the carriers?
Asymmetric warfare is what our intelligence agencies are now very good at, and probably the best in the world. And by the way, this is something that I brought here to New Zealand this time. While we still need your support on a humanitarian side, on military equipment side, or training, but now actually there's a lot we can share with your intelligence agencies. We can make them more prepared for any kind of conflict. We can, beef up your defense. And actually, we're now the #1 producer of drones in the world, which probably you may buy to actually improve your own capabilities. And the way we deploy those drones, actually underwater, above the ground. Just recently, we had this Ukrainian underwater drone which went into the Russian Black Sea port, and from underwater, the drone has shot down a fighter jet.
So you're here not so much to ask for more diplomatic support, but to do some defence deals potentially.
I'm here to engage with government and politicians and business people. I'm here to promote, facilitate cooperation, and I think defense industry, or generally defense cooperation, is one of those. And look, there's so much at stake for New Zealand the way this war is going to play out. You have to remember that Russia is a permanent member of the UN Security Council. It has nuclear weapons. So if Russians can do what they've done, why other nuclear countries can't do what Russia did?
Including China, perhaps in Taiwan. Appreciate you coming on the program this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Great to catch up with you as always.
Thank you, Ryan.
Is Vasyl Miroshnichenko, who's the Ukrainian ambassador to Australia and New Zealand. It's just gone 16 minutes after 7. Coming up next, where to now for New Zealand rugby after Mark Robinson's resignation? We've got a big, important panel next.
I'm Hayden Scott, and I'm a knife maker. I make knives from my workshop at home in West Auckland. Yeah, my previous life I was a chef, did that for 25 years, but I had this knife making thing that I was doing and had been doing for some time, and so that transition from finishing that 25-year career and taking the plunge into full-time knife maker, I had been building up to that, but I still had to take a leap.
In 1985, my grandfather set out to make the world a better tea. That's why we grow our own, unlike other tea companies. Then pick the best leaves by hand, not machine, and pack it right here in Sri Lanka. But it's not just the taste that makes our tea better. 15% of our profit goes to humanity and to the elephants. As my grandfather said,
do try it. You Do It delivers high-quality New Zealand-made flat-pack DIY kitchen cabinetry. With flexible widths at your fingertips, it makes designing easy. All at an affordable price because you order online and cut out the middleman. You can even upgrade your dream kitchen with You Do It stylish and clever options, like choosing wall cabinets with overhanging doors, or select from a range of pull-out storage solutions. Add premium soft-close drawers and ask to stretch the height, width or depth of your cabinets. Upgrade your kitchen today and head to newsroom.co.nz.
Welcome back. You're watching Herald Now. Great to have your company, 718. After 6 years at the helm, the New Zealand Rugby CEO Mark Robinson has resigned. Some headline-grabbing stories have marked his tenure, switching from Ian Foster to Scott Robertson as the All Blacks coach, the Silver Lake deal, COVID, now a refreshed board and a new chairman in former All Blacks captain David Kirk. So, what's the future of New Zealand rugby? It's the big question on everybody's lips this morning. Joining us to discuss, Elliot Smith, News Talk ZB rugby editor, the voice of rugby, and Andrew Gordy, sports commentator. Good morning, lads.
Morning, Bridgie.
Good to see you. Elliot, we'll start with you. Is this actually going to be an existential question for NZR, or is this just one CEO out and new one in?
No, I think this is going to be a change. They've got a new board in place in recent months that's going to change the direction of New Zealand rugby. Swept out the old one, put in the new one. A lot of changes around the heartland. Wanted full change. They didn't quite get there, but they got a lot of change on the board. So they're going to have someone at the top that's going to drive some of that change they want. But it's such an overarching role with the commercial side of things, the heartland side, the Super Rugby, the international game, the All Blacks. Very, very hard to find someone that ticks all those boxes and knows what they're talking about.
The other question this morning, I spoke to Simon Porter, who's a player agent. He was saying, actually, maybe they'd go for a group CEO that would look over everything.
Yeah, I think that might be the smart way to go, because especially if you've got someone within the organisation at the moment, Chris Landrum, who is a very, very smart operator. I'm not sure if he's the kind of guy that should necessarily be the CEO, but he would make an excellent head of rugby. He's someone that New Zealand Rugby, I think, needs to retain. He is a smart person to have in the organisation, so I think that feels like a perfect sort of role for him. But who they go for on top, yeah, we'll have to wait and see.
Any thoughts, any ideas, Elliot?
Well, I was throwing around a few names before with Andrew off here, and there's not many people with the kind of business acumen that you probably need to run a high-performance sports organisation, with also the high-performance side of things. The All Blacks are a worldwide brand. Super Rugby, a lot of questions around that. Then you get into the NPC. So I don't think it needs to be someone with a rugby background. I don't even know if it needs to be necessarily a New Zealander, but they need to know high-performance sport and need to know the business side. And surely there must be someone out there that can tick those boxes, but it's such a big role. Mark Robinson played for the All Blacks. He knows the game intimately in New Zealand. Very few people out there at the moment have probably the rugby side of things. They might have the business side. So where New Zealand Rugby goes, do they go, we'll leverage the rugby side and go with a business person, and vice versa is going to be fascinating.
It's almost like running a government, though, isn't it, running NZR, because it's so cultural as well. That you're not just answerable to shareholders or investors, you've actually got to answer to the New Zealand public too.
And that's why this decision is going to be such a tricky one. If you go international, that's where Mark Robinson's strength was, probably, because he was founded in the game, right? He's gone right through the system to be an All Black. He's had the smarts, and that's what made him a great CEO. He had connection across the board, I suppose. And I suppose this is where I'd sort of expect Silver Lake to step up. This is what they were brought in for. Surely they've got someone that they can refer to bring in and become this new CEO. But you've got to it's a very unique job being the head of New Zealand Rugby. And so to drag in that sort of expertise from internationally, you're not necessarily going to have that, hardwired knowledge, I suppose, that someone like Mark Robinson had. So it's a tricky decision.
Very tricky. Just very quickly before we go, Mark Robinson says he has left NZR in a better place than when he found it. Elliot, do you agree with that?
I think he probably has, because he found it 3 weeks before COVID and could have gone down the toilet very, very quickly. So credit to him, he managed to get the rugby back on the park. He managed to get it out of COVID and changed Super Rugby in the way that looked, got the Silver Lake deal across the line. The jury's out on that. But I think he left in a better place.
Yeah, okay.
I think if we're marking Mark Robinson out of 10, I'm giving him a 5.5. Ooh. It wasn't a catastrophic failure, but it wasn't an overwhelming success either. And I think after, nearly 6 years in the job, that's long enough to stamp your mark on the job, and I'm not convinced he's necessarily done that. But I think some of the work that he has done during this time, we might in 5 or 10 years' time look back and say, Mark Robinson implemented that, but it's hard to put the finger on that right now.
Okay, interesting. Guys, thanks so much for coming in. Great to see you both.
Cheers, mate.
That's Elliot Smith, News Talk ZB, voice of rugby, and Andrew Gordy, sports commentator, voice of himself. 7:23. Next, builders checking their own work. How's that going to work? Garth Bray from Business Desk is here to explain with our business segment. Stay tuned.
Maximising productivity, what have you got?
Well, if we switch to 2 degrees, with Flex for Business, we can instantly manage data usage, employee mobile plans, and cost centre reporting, saving us time and money. Cool. I'll get onto that then. Mm-hmm.
Hip-hop and R&B. Flavour.
After 20 seasons on the footy field, it's fair to say I know a thing or two about resilience. Digging deep when the going gets tough. Just like Kaiwaka wet weather gear. Kaiwaka's been in the game for 200 seasons. 50 years of facing up to the elements, getting the job done, and coming back for more. And that's guaranteed for a lifetime. Kaiwaka, designed to perform, made to outlast.
When building for investment, it's important to find a team that you can trust.
We decided to build the GGs because of the good quality that they always provide us.
They help us throughout the whole process of getting the resource consent to the building consent, and their contracts are very easy to understand. We have built 4 houses with GJ Gardeners, and it's just easier every time we work with them.
I'll definitely recommend GJs to all of my friends and family.
If you're thinking of building, choose the builder you'll want to build with time and time again.
You're watching Herald Now. Great to have your company this Tuesday morning, 25 minutes after 7 o'clock. And Donald Trump, if you're just joining us, Donald Trump in the States, obviously it's all kicking off in LA with Newsom, who's the governor. And Trump has just been asked, hey, what do you think about arresting Gavin Newsom, who's the governor of California? And Trump, albeit jokingly, said, yeah, why not? Arrest the guy. Anyway, we've got the video for you. We'll play that shortly. The protests continued overnight. There's cars being burned, all sorts of stuff happening. We'll bring you up to date after the news update at 7:30. Time now to talk business with our partners 2 Degrees. 2 big home builders have struck a deal with Auckland Council to sign off their own work. It's a trial to see if they can cut inspection costs while keeping to the building code. Business Desk's Garth Bray has the details and he's with me this morning. Garth, good morning.
Good morning, Ryan.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
So who are we talking about here that could potentially be signing off their own stuff?
So this is GJ Gardner and Genian Homes, 2 of the big group home builders. And like everything now, there's an app for this. So there's an app called Artisan that brands the building people have put out that basically has a predetermined set of shots that you need to take. And they've struck a deal with the council to take those shots and then have Auckland Council inspectors take a look at them, verify them on site. It's going to run for 12 months until about June next year, and they'll sort of check it every quarter to make sure that it's going kind of well. And I guess the whole point of this is that it's a pilot that'll take the process from building consents all the way through to the code compliance certificate. This is stuff that can take a lot longer if, you know, your inspector can't turn out on that day, or, you know, there's lots to organise. And I guess it's just trying to streamline the process.
Yeah, and take it a little bit online as well to take that. What about, because the government's already announced, just recently announced, because we had the minister on saying they're doing this stuff already, aren't they?
Yeah, but this is how it could happen, and this is actually separate and ahead of that. This is they've actually got in there and said, hey, this is the way we could jump ahead of where the government's going and see if it can actually work so that it's up and running. I mean, there's a bit of reflection in the community, the building community. I think master builders have said probably it's only these big group home builders that have got the systems in place maybe to try and run this kind of stuff. It's going to leave more time for your council inspectors maybe to look over more complex builds, or maybe builds where perhaps there've been a few, you know, little risks in the background, that kind of thing.
Given it's a trial, what is it, if something goes tits up, what comeback do I have?
as always, get a good lawyer before you get in there. I mean, if you're buying a house and building a house, right, you know, it's a big investment, so always get your own independent legal advice would be my, you know, and anyone's, frankly, good advice. And you'd have to hope that they're going to try their best in the first 12 months to make sure that stuff like that doesn't happen, because it's really in their interest to try and make it work in the long term.
Totally. Hey, the Sky City, we had Anne Gibson on the show late on Friday morning because the legal action between Sky City and Fletcher's over the convention centre. What is the latest there? What's the market making of all this?
Yeah, well, we've had sort of a day of trading yesterday, 2 days of trading really to sort of see how that settles in. Bit of a spike. I think last time I looked, like Fletcher's had sort of dropped about 3% and Sky City had risen about 5%, a little bit of interest there, but the analysts aren't convinced. There was a report out from Forsyth Bay yesterday saying, hey, look, we just can't see how, unless they've got some absolutely cracker piece of information that we don't know about, smoking gun appropriate given the fire that caused all the trouble. We just think the lawyers basically are going to make bank out of this. They're going to write fees. I mean, there was an analyst from Alan Gray who's took a large position in Fletcher's just before this news broke, and they're saying, oh, you know, good luck. It's just one for the lawyers.
Okay, well, yeah, if we had stocks in law firms, they'd probably be up overnight. Garth, good to see you.
Always.
Garth Bray from Business Desk, and we're talking business every day with our partners 2 Degrees. Auckland, by the way, just gone 29 after 7. We'll get to news in just a second. Auckland has woken up blanketed in fog this morning. So if you're travelling to the airport, check your flight is still departing. So far this morning, we've heard of 1 domestic regional flight being cancelled and 6 domestic regional flights being delayed. It's the small ones that get affected. Your main trunk line's fine. Domestic flights, Wellington, Auckland, Christchurch, Dunedin, Queenstown, not affected at all. International flights also unaffected by fog. Check Auckland Airport's website, www.aucklandairport.co.nz for the latest flight arrival. Do I need to tell you this? Just look out the window. If there's fog, then go and check your flight. You're not stupid people, are you? It's 7:30. Flick me an email, ryan@nzherald.co.nz if you've got anything to say about what we're talking about this morning. First, let's get to a news update with Neva.
Herald NOW News, powered by Newstalk ZB.
Experts are urging the government to take immediate action against corruption from organised crime. An independent advisory panel says New Zealand is naive to the threat of corruption and must act to protect its reputation. In a new report to Customs and Associate Police Minister Casey Costello, it lays out several recommendations. It includes establishing a central authority to investigate corruption, modernising laws, longer prison sentences, and stronger vetting of employees in high-risk industries. The government's pumping more funding into tourism marketing, with a goal of generating an extra $300 million in spending. Minister Louise Upston's announced a $13.5 million injection into Tourism New Zealand, targeting Australia, the US and China. It's expected to bring an extra 72,000 visitors over coming years. Rotorua Mayor Tanya Tapsell told Ryan Bridge the spending goal's easily achievable.
Chinese visitors, their average spend is $6,000 when they do come here. That's why they are a target market for us. They're very high spenders.
More people are dipping into their Kiwi Saver accounts for financial hardship reasons. Inland revenue figures show more than 44,000 people withdrew money between July 2024 and April 2025. That's compared to about 32,000 in the previous financial year. Financial mentor David Very says while it should be a last resort, about half the people he talks to want to do a Kiwi Saver hardship withdrawal. Deportation protests in Los Angeles are dispersing after 3 days of violent unrest. City and state leaders are accusing Donald Trump of deliberately inflaming tensions after he deployed the National Guard to fire tear gas and rubber bullets at demonstrators. At least 56 people have been arrested. Australian Channel 9 journalist Lauren Tomasi was caught in the crossfire, shot with a rubber bullet on air.
Firing rubber bullets at protesters, moving them on through the heart of LA. You just shut the fuck up! You okay?
Tomasi was not seriously hurt. A renewed call for people to vaccinate as the cold weather brings forth a range of infectious diseases. The national rate for acute respiratory illness infections climbed to 21 per 100,000 people in the week ending June 1st. Vaccinologist Dr. Helen Patoussis-Harris says flu, COVID-19 and whooping cough are all in the air right now. She says pneumococcal is also one to watch for.
It gets very chummy with the influenza virus. So influenza viruses can actually predispose people from getting very ill, for example, with severe pneumonias and things.
From today, Aucklanders can begin checking out their council property valuations. New capital values are being issued this week for 630,000 properties across the region. On average, home values dropped 9% from CVs released in 2021.
Herald Now Sport, brought to you by Gold Sport.
Canterbury have beaten Parramatta 30-12 in League's NRL to return to the top of the ladder. The Magic have defeated the Stars 71-54 to complete round 5 of netball's ANZ Premiership. Usman Khawaja believes Marnus Labuschagne can don the pads first in Australia's World Test Championship cricket final, starting tomorrow against South Africa at Lord's, despite once claiming he had opening-itis.
You're watching Herald Now. It is 26 minutes away from 8 o'clock. Labor leader Chris Hipkins, leader of the opposition, will be with us shortly via Zoom. Another week off for Parliament. Honestly, when do these guys do any work? They haven't even passed the budget yet. And we had budget week, then we had a week off, then we came back for a week in which we wasted how many hours doing the Privileges Committee. Now we're off for another week. When are we even going to pass a budget? What's going on? If we kept them busier, would they be less annoying? You know, that's what I want to know. And maybe we'll ask Chippy. He's here next. 26 minutes away from 8. Let's go to Los Angeles very quickly. New pictures in overnight of cars being set on fire by protesters. We had obviously this scene yesterday and more of it overnight while we were sleeping too, of the National Guard moving in and moving protesters on. We also now have a war of words between Gavin Newsom, who's the governor, and the President Donald Trump. Donald Trump joking that he thinks Gavin Newsom should be arrested. He said it was a joke, so we take it as a joke. But also Gavin Newsom now suing Trump's White House over what they say is an abuse of power. 25 to 8, here's weather.
Herald Now weather, brought to you by You Do It Kitchens.
Good morning. Many around the country waking to fog. It does clear. We have a narrow ridge of high pressure today, but this front will start to pass over the lower North Island, and the low out over the Tasman Sea is also approaching, but it stays west for now. So to the South Island, and fine and frosty or fine and foggy, cloud will start to creep in during the afternoon with mostly light winds. Cloud spreads to all here, then drizzle, then rain arriving tonight for everyone. Maybe a few heavy falls too for Nelson. Only 10 the high today for Christchurch. Many waking with frost this morning. It's not a bad start to the day, but cloud does increase and any showers will turn to rain tonight, possibly thundery too for Taranaki. It's a similar trend here with a fine morning, then cloud rolls in, turning to rain tonight. Thunderstorms possible for Tauranga, Tokoroa and also Rotorua. And rain spreads to all here from late morning. There could be more thunderstorms too, with hail, and the north or northeasterly wind will be gusty in those thunderstorms, potentially up to 100 k's for Auckland.
And time now is 24 minutes away from 8 o'clock. There are a couple of ways you can watch us on Herald Now. Of course, nzherald.co.nz. We live stream 7 till 9 weekdays, or you can watch us from your couch on our YouTube channel. The address is at NZ Herald TV. We're streaming there every morning from 7 o'clock. Right, business owners say homeless people in Rotorua are being accused of drinking and doing drugs in public, urinating on cars and in doorways, and generally just making the CBD unsafe and unsavoury, particularly for tourists. This is a tourist town, let's not forget. Now, one resident reckons he's got the answer to all of this. Rotorua Daily Post senior reporter Kelly Makiha is with us this morning with all the details. Kelly, good morning.
Morning, Ryan. Yeah, look, trust me, there are so many beautiful things to see and do in Rotorua, but at the moment, travelling down Amahia Street and seeing our rough sleepers, unfortunately, isn't one of them. It's a growing concern at the moment, as you can see there from the pictures. We've got homeless people who have congregated outside the Salvation Army store, and they're they've got their mattresses, they've got all their belongings stacked up. There's about a dozen of them. I drove past this morning on my way to work, and I think I counted about 15 people asleep there on the street. The Salvation Army aren't moving them along. Basically, they say there's nowhere for them to go, so why would we? So I did a story on Saturday speaking to a local business owner, and really he's fed up. His turnover has gone from a modest, you might say, $2,000 a week to less than $400 a week. And he's saying, how am I going to pay my bills? He thinks he can see customers physically coming along Amahia Street and then turning and walking the other way. He just described the behaviour of the homeless people as being like dogs. And he said that they're sitting there openly drinking, openly doing drugs. And it's not a good look for Rotorua. It is the talk of the town at the moment. So I went down and had a talk to some of them at the end of last week. And you might think it could be, the mean old national government, closing down our emergency housing motels. But when I spoke to some of these people, it wasn't the issue. They said openly that they prefer to be there than in emergency housing motels because there's too many rules. They've been there and done that with emergency housing motels. Most of them have been kicked out already, and the others that I spoke to, they just hadn't bothered to apply. So there could be a solution. Today's story is about a local homeless campaigner. He's controversial. We probably don't have time to go into why he's controversial today, but he's come up with this idea of importing cabins from China, and he reckons he's got a bit of a deal with a landowner south of Rotorua, and he reckons chuck the cabins on there, and we can move them south.
Kelly, it's an original story, and I actually spoke to your mayor this morning on News Talk ZB and asked her about your story, and because we were talking tourism, of course, and she said that you can't really do anything about it, you just have to hope, and she's asking the Sallys and whoever's giving Milo and coffee and tea and things to these homeless people to just not do it there. Do it in a park or do it somewhere far away, but don't do it in this very busy main street.
Well, that's right. And where they're camped out at the moment, just around the corner from where they are, is Visions of a Helping Hand, and they're getting free showers, they're getting free laundry service, they're getting tea, coffee and bickies, and then at night time they're getting a meal delivered to them at 7 o'clock every night from the local food service. Rotorua has a massive heart, I must say. Our social services, that they rally around these people, but I guess the question has been asked, is it being made too easy for them? And then when I spoke to these people last week, they were saying, oh, look, we can't afford to be paying our benefit money on rent, but, they're getting free food.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the thing is why would you move, right? Kelly, thank you very much for that. Great to have you on the program as always. Kelly Makiha, who's from the Rotorua Daily Post. Time now is 20 to 8, and the government, you might have seen yesterday, investing $13.5 million on a tourism PR exercise. They reckon, get this, and how is this for a return on investment? They reckon they'll generate $300 million in tourism spending off the back of that. Is this believable? Labor Party leader Chris Hipkins is with me this morning. Chippy Chipster, how are you? Good morning. Have we got you?
You have indeed.
Oh, there we are. Good morning. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm very good, thank you, Ryan.
Where are you? Because Parliament's not at work again. I mean, do you guys do anything?
I am home in Upper Hutt. You need to talk to Chris Bishop about the somewhat strange parliamentary sitting program now, where we sort of sit for 1 week and then we have 2 weeks where we don't sit. I mean, I'm not quite sure what the government's up to there, but that's the government's responsibility these days.
I agree with you. It's weird because you haven't even passed the budget yet, right?
No, I mean, the budget does take a while because it has to go off to select committees. And one of the things that is happening this week is the select committees will all be meeting with the ministers, where they go through the budget sort of line by line and they get to question them on what's in the budget. So there is still valuable work that's happening at the moment, even if a lot of MPs are still at Parliament this week, but Parliament itself is not sitting.
I reckon we tie you to your desks and force you to do 12-hour days, at least 5 days a week, and then I reckon half of the nonsense that goes on there would just stop.
Well, you might be a bit optimistic there, I think.
It might even probably would get worse. Hey, the numbers that we got from the government yesterday on tourism, it sounds so good. I'm willing to put $100 million into the tourism advertising kitty. Is this believable? Do you think these numbers are legit?
Oh, I mean, I think it's a good that they're making the investment. They cut $20 million out of marketing New Zealand tourism last year, and now they're putting some of that money back in again. So I think that's a good thing. But I think we need to make sure that we're not just investing in the marketing, we've also got to invest in the tourism infrastructure because we want to make sure tourists have a good time when they're here. We also want to make sure that we're not straining, the tourist amenities that we've got as well. And some of our smaller areas, which are tourist hotspots, are worried that they're a bit stretched and a bit strained by the level of tourism that they're getting.
When it comes to the international issues I was going to ask you about this morning, Greta Thunberg, who is apparently on her way to Israel or has just arrived in Israel. We're having an update on that shortly. Do you think this is useful?
I mean, I think we should, as New Zealand, we should participate through the official kind of international processes that exist, so the International Court of Justice and so on, which we have, got a pretty proud tradition, I think, as a country of standing up for strong principles through those kind of bodies. And I think that's the best, avenue for New Zealand. I think us making sure that our actions are in line with international law and in line with international practice. I think that's the best place for New Zealand to be dedicating its efforts.
Rather than jumping on a yacht and trying to sail there yourself.
Oh, I mean, look, protest, I agree protest has a place, but I think, New Zealand, the best thing that we can do is participate through the official processes.
Now, are you Team Trump or Team Musk?
I'm Team Kiwi. I'm not sure that either of them really are doing much to help New Zealand at this point. I am concerned about what Trump's tariffs are going to mean for New Zealand. But frankly, I'm not sure that either of them are contributing positively to our quality of life here in Aotearoa.
What about the school lunches? Because you guys have got the Auditor General, you've asked the Auditor General to look into this, and the Auditor General is taking a look at certain aspects of the school lunch program. There was a story from the Herald, actually from the Northern Advocate, about school lunches in Northland, thousands of them still going uneaten. I think the uneaten rate was about 8%, something like that. Is that a worry?
It is a worry because, ultimately we want kids to have a lunch at school. The previous lunch program, when we set it up, the lunches were being made locally. And what we managed to achieve through that was that the rate of uneaten lunches continued to go down. And it was because the catering companies that were making the lunches could work with the schools and say, okay, what's the food that the kids are eating? What's the food that the kids aren't eating? And they would change the menu to make sure that they were serving up stuff that kids actually wanted to eat. And they got the food waste and the food, the uneaten lunches down to quite a very, very low level by doing that. I think the issue with the mass-produced lunches is, a lot of them, I mean, I've only seen pictures of some of them, but they don't look like anything that an adult would want to eat, so why should a kid be asked to eat it?
But is it about wanting to eat or needing to eat? This has moved beyond need, hasn't it?
Oh no, I don't think so at all. I mean, kids.
But if you're hungry,
kids have this capacity. Kids have a phenomenal capacity not to eat, even when they're hungry, if the food isn't appealing to them.
Try telling that to the kids in Gaza right now.
Well, look, I think we've got to make sure that we're feeding New Zealand kids. We've got an important role to play internationally as well around the situation in Gaza, and I don't want to trivialise that. But I think, making sure New Zealand kids are going to school and are properly fed when they're at school is really important.
Okay.
And there are a lot of our kids who don't show up with a lunchbox with food in it.
Field days. You're off to field days this week. What are you going to tell farmers exactly when you get there? Are you going to say that they would be... Would farmers be better off under Labor? Can you say that to them with your hand on your heart?
Going to field days is in large part about listening to farmers and talking to them about, what's on their mind. We know we've still got issues to work through with them around climate change and, methane in particular, also issues around fresh water. But we've got a lot of areas where we can work together. We've got a lot of common interest as well. A lot of farmers raising issues around access to things like health services, access to education for their kids. These are all things that the farming community are also concerned about, that we can work together on.
But in terms of
I think there's a lot of common
interests. In terms of on-farm, how uncommon are your interests? Are you going to put agriculture back into the ETS because National took it out? He Waka Ekanoa was disbanded. Do you bring that back?
No, we're reviewing all of that at the moment, and we are talking to the farmers about that as we go through that review process.
What are you hearing?
We haven't made decisions on that yet, and we're actively talking to them about it.
Okay.
But there are a whole lot of areas on farm where we've got common interest. So if you're looking at things like energy, farming is an energy-intensive activity. The potential for them to access more support for things like solar panels, for example, which can reduce their costs. Those are things where we're already having really constructive conversations with farmers about that.
But you're open. The question of putting agriculture back into the ETS, you are genuinely open and listening on that issue.
Absolutely. We have not made any decisions on that yet, and we are really actively talking to them, and we're looking at the science as well.
Was it not a principle?
Farmers, we're talking to the experts who are doing the research in this area too.
When you made that announcement, it was a very principled stance about why it was being done and the rationale for it. Do you not have that same principle now?
Yes, we do, but it doesn't mean that we're going to try and achieve that principle through exactly the same mechanism. And, we are going to have to make sure that what we're doing around methane is sustainable here in New Zealand. We need to make sure that we're reducing our carbon emissions. Those are conversations we continue to have.
Right, and that means reducing stock numbers.
We're not committed to a particular way of doing that at this point.
Right, okay. So either they'll get put in the ETS or there'll be a limit on stock numbers, or a reduction in stock numbers will be the result of a policy.
Well, not necessarily, because there's also a whole lot of technological solutions as well. So there's some fantastic science happening in New Zealand, funded by the last Labor government, actually, about how we can farm more sustainably, how we can reduce our methane emissions through more sustainable farming practice. And, we're pretty excited where some of the science of that is going at the moment. So lots of conversations still to be had there.
All right. Very good to have you on the program every week as we do. Is this your home office behind you? It looks quite, I have to say, it looks quite nice.
It's just the dining room, actually.
Oh.
Right here. Yeah.
Oh.
And that's a huia. You can see that it's entrepreneur who put that together, who we hear a bit from, does a lot of fantastic work with at-risk kids.
Very cool. You've done a great job at smashing that together. It looks like a great background. Almost fake. Labour leader Chris Hipkins, thanks for your time this morning. Just gone 10 away from 8, and you're watching Herald Now. Coming up, thanks to our partners Noel Leeming, the rise of AI continues. We'll look at some of the random things it can do. Just apparently able to do your tax return now. Not that the IRD is liking that. Stay tuned.
Oh. Yeah, do what I want. Yeah, can't get enough. Yeah, do what I want. Still can't get enough. Yeah, do what I want. Yeah, can't get enough. Yeah, do what I want. Still can't get enough. Yeah, do what I want. Yeah, can't get enough. Yeah, do what I want. Still can't get enough. Yeah, do what I want. Yeah, can't get enough. Still can't get enough.
Ah, here she is. How's the business going?
Good, actually. We just switched to 2 degrees. Well, we tested the networks and couldn't see any difference. But 2 degrees has the most satisfied customers. With Flex, we get instant control of phone plans, data usage, and cost centre reporting. And they're the fastest growing business network.
Can I have what she's having?
I'm Hayden Scott, and I'm a knife maker. I make knives from my workshop at home in West Auckland. Here in my previous life, I was a chef. Did that for 25 years. But I had this knife making thing that I was doing and had been doing for some time. And so that transition from finishing that 25-year career and taking the plunge into full-time knife maker, I had been building up to that, but I still had to take a leap.
Welcome back. You're watching Herald Now. If you've got anything to say about our interviews this morning or something you want to chat about, Ryan at nzherald.co.nz, get in touch. Time now to talk tech, thanks to our partners Noel Leeming. Today we're taking a look at interesting ways people are using generative AI. That's artificial intelligence programs like ChatGPT, if you've used that before. Paul Spain, CEO at Gorilla Technology, is with us this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Ryan.
Paul, good to have you here. Thanks to our partners Noel Leeming. Memory is one of the things that's most important when people are thinking about ChatGPT. It's a memory jogger.
Yeah, you can get it to store information for you, but also it's got access to all the information that's out on the World Wide Web, which is pretty handy. You can now converse with it. So this morning on my way into the studio, I had a bit of a chat with ChatGPT. But there are also other tools. So there's Suno and a range of others that can make music for you. So if you're trying to remember something specific, maybe you can make it into a song. Make some pretty good songs. You pick your genre, and if it's catchy enough, then maybe you'll sing along and learn that. We've also got Notebook LM. So you feed in the information that you want to learn, about, and it turns it into a podcast. And it's got two people chatting through the topic.
Is it interesting? As interesting as anything I'd host, probably. So then why not?
It's actually pretty good.
Really?
Yeah, I was pretty blown away the first time that I heard it, and what sound like real voices with real emotion, and somehow it's able to bring that together and make a credible bit of content.
How is it? Where is it pulling that from? Like the voices and everything? Is it pulling it from current podcasters and broadcasters and things? And same with the music situation, as I know Elton John's not been happy about this.
Well, this is part of the rub, and there has been some legal cases and challenges going on around these companies, how they access the content, be it voices, be it images, be it all of the text from around the web that gets swept up.
Right. Tax returns. Apparently, it's now able to file a tax return. Not that the government's actually like this happening.
Yeah. Look, I don't think in New Zealand you can just get it to do all of that work for you. But it's going to depend on your case with your self-employed, personal, and so on. But you can certainly go into ChatGPT and ask it a range of tax questions. You can get it to do things like analyse receipts if you scan them in and so on. So there's a variety of things there. But then there are applications that use generative AI in the background to do certain tasks, and that becomes part of the picture, but it's the broader software and technology that's doing that lifting. You've got to be a little bit careful because we've seen online some people are a little bit tempted where maybe they don't have a receipt or a bit of information for the tax department to go in and generate these fake receipts, which ChatGPT can do for you. And they look somewhat credible, but they're reasonably easy to pick up.
Would, like the teachers do with the students who are using ChatGPT to cheat in the exams, would the tax department maybe use it to check what's real and what's not? Or is that impossible to tell once it's...
Well, I think it really comes down to the audit level when they start looking at receipts. So it's not a typical day-to-day.
Great to have you on the show, as always, explaining some of the uses of generative AI. That's Paul Spain from Gorilla Technology. And that's Tech Tuesday, thanks to our partners at Noel Leeming. Great to have them on board. Just gone 4 minutes away from 8 o'clock. With winter well and truly here, ski fields across the country are preparing for the season ahead. NZ Ski CEO Paul Anderson is in Queenstown to give us an update this morning. Paul, you must be cold.
Yeah, it's -4. Nice crisp morning here this morning.
Doesn't look like much snow behind you. What's going on?
I'm actually down at the airport, but I was hoping you'd be able to see the beautiful sight of Queenstown's Coronet Peak's snowmaking system behind me.
I can just make it out over your right shoulder. Yeah. So how is it going? What's the powder been like?
Yeah, look, we're looking great. We had a great southerly flow came through last week, dropped about 15 to 20 centimetres on the Queenstown Mountains, Coronet Peak and the Remarkables. And we've had the most incredible period of snowmaking. Since about last Thursday, our snowmaking guns have been firing, and we've got some massive piles of snow I think you've seen pictures now that we're just starting to push them out and create the trails all set for opening this Saturday.
Fantastic. Have you got enough staff? What, business-wise, everything looking good?
Yeah, it's looking great. We had record numbers of applications for staff, so we've got the absolute cream of the crop this year. We're very happy with our team coming on board. They're working hard. I mean, a big shout out at the moment to particularly the groomers and the snowmakers who are working incredibly hard to get us up and running on Saturday.
It looks amazing. We're seeing your pictures coming in now, Paul.
Cool.
Anything new or that you can sell us on this season in particular that you're doing?
Last year we put in the new shadow chairlifter Remarkables, and this year it's just been more investments in our snowmaking system, which is really, really paying dividends. As I said, they've been firing for the last 5 or 6 days, making a great deal of snow.
Paul, thanks so much, mate. Best of luck for this weekend. Great to have you on the show. That's NZ Ski CEO Paul Anderson in Queenstown with an update on the Remarkables Coronet Peak. By the way, he was at the airport. I didn't quite realise when we started that. Not up on the ski field, which is why there was a dearth of snow behind him. Right. Pretty amazing shots from the Remarkables, which we're showing you now. So these were taken yesterday. These are the ones, I think we might have just shown you some of this, but these shots were taken yesterday up at the Remarkables by Paul's team. Hard at work, busy getting everything ready for the season, which kicks off this weekend, which is fantastic. We did also have reports of snow in Northland, other end of the country, over the last couple of days. There was a bunch of travellers on the road, saw some white stuff on the side of the road, thought it was snow, put it on a Facebook page. Actually, turns out it was just hail collecting on the side of the road. Has been freezing up there though. 1 away from 8 now. For the North Island ski field update, we've got Pure Turoa Chief Executive Jono Dean, who's live on the mountain for us this morning. Jono, good morning. How's she looking?
Morning, Ryan. How are you? Yeah, really good. As you can see him behind us there, Rotorua, it's a beautiful day out here this morning, and we're getting set up for winter.
Fantastic. When are you guys due to open? How's that looking?
Look, we're open at the moment on weekends through June, and we're anticipating that we'll be fully up and running as we get closer to the school holidays. We're sort of hoping at this stage, with a little bit of snowmaking, that we'll have some list turning for Matariki long weekend.
And what about the business side of it? Obviously, there's been, we all know the story. How's it looking?
Yeah, good. It's really, pleasing to be through all the uncertainty with North Island skiing and being back open for both Whakapapa and Turoa is really, really important. They're, really key assets to the Central North Island region, to the townships of Ohakuni and Aitahi and National Park and Tomatanui and Turangi. So, critically important. We're really pleased to be through that uncertainty now and out the other side. And
you've got a 10-year concession. How important is getting this first season right?
Well, this is actually the second season on Turoa with the business being settled last year. But every season is important, Ryan, when you're in the ski industry. There's certainly a very limited window for operations. And, we're really stoked with the fact that we're up and running and off and running into 2025. But certainly, the real imperative here for both the ski areas is to ensure that they've got longevity and tenure. And that's going to require, a lot longer than 10 years to be able to operate.
Yeah, appreciate you coming on the program this morning. Looks great behind you, and we're looking forward to getting up there as soon as we can. Jono Dean, Turoa Chief Executive, with us this morning. It's 1 minute after 8. They're open on weekends at the moment, but hopefully open throughout the week shortly. 8 o'clock, you're watching Herald Now. Good morning, welcome to Herald Now. I'm Ryan Bridge. Tuesday the 10th of June. Coming up on the show this hour, Auckland's long await for new property valuations. Finally they're coming out. So what's it going to do to your rates bill? And it's time to get tough. More Kiwis, as times get tough I should say, more Kiwis are dipping into their Kiwi Saver to help them out. What do these hardship withdrawals mean long term? After 10 years of Google reviews, we'll find out this morning which Kiwi tourist destinations have the best feedback. with Lorna Riley, plus lots more to come. Right now we'll get to your news with Neva.
Herald NOW News, powered by Newstalk ZB.
Experts are urging the government to take immediate action against corruption from organised crime. An independent advisory panel says New Zealand is naive to the threat of corruption and must act to protect its reputation. In a new report to Customs and Associate Police Minister Casey Costello, it lays out several recommendations. It includes establishing a central authority to investigate corruption, modernising laws, longer prison sentences, and stronger vetting of employees in high-risk industries. The government's pumping more funding into tourism marketing, with a goal of generating an extra $300 million in spending. Minister Louise Upston's announced a $13.5 million injection into Tourism New Zealand, targeting Australia, the US and China. It's expected to bring an extra 72,000 visitors over coming years. Rotorua Mayor Tanya Tapsell told Ryan Bridge the spending goal's easily achievable.
Chinese visitors, their average spend is $6,000 when they do come here. That's why they are a target market for us. They're very high spenders.
More people are dipping into their Kiwi Saver accounts for financial hardship reasons. Inland revenue figures show more than 44,000 people withdrew money between July 2024 and April 2025. That's compared to about 32,000 in the previous financial year. Financial mentor David Very says while it should be a last resort, about half the people he talks to want to do a Kiwi Saver hardship withdrawal. Deportation protests in Los Angeles are dispersing after 3 days of violent unrest. City and state leaders are accusing Donald Trump of deliberately inflaming tensions after he deployed the National Guard to fire tear gas and rubber bullets at demonstrators. At least 56 people have been arrested. Australian Channel 9 journalist Lauren Tomasi was caught in the crossfire, shot with a rubber bullet on air.
Firing rubber bullets at protesters, moving them on through the heart of LA.
You just shut the fuck up. You okay?
Tomasi was not seriously hurt. A renewed call for people to vaccinate as the cold weather brings forth a range of infectious diseases. The national rate for acute respiratory illness infections climbed to 21 per 100,000 people in the week ending June 1st. Vaccinologist Dr. Helen Patousas-Harris says flu, COVID-19 and whooping cough are all in the air right now. She says pneumococcal is also one to watch for.
It gets very chummy with the influenza virus. So influenza viruses can actually predispose people from getting very ill, for example, with severe pneumonias and things.
From today, Aucklanders can begin checking out their council property valuations. New capital values are being issued this week for 630,000 properties across the region. On average, home values dropped 9% from CVs released in 2021.
Herald NOW Sport, brought to you by Gold Sport.
Canterbury have beaten Parramatta 30-12 in League's NRL to return to the top of the ladder. The Magic have defeated the Stars 71-54 to complete round 5 of netball's ANZ Premiership. Usman Khawaja believes Marnus Labuschagne can don the pads first in Australia's World Test Championship cricket final, starting tomorrow against South Africa at Lords, despite once claiming he had opening-itis.
Thanks so much for that, Neva. We'll get to weather in a second. And if you're an Aucklander and you own a home, first of all, congratulations. Second of all, what's going to happen to your CV? The council's putting the numbers out. Bernard Osman at the Herald's done a good story on this. You can check it out, nzherald.co.nz. But we're going to speak to Calvin Davidson about what suburbs and which areas of Auckland in relation to the central city are doing well and who's doing poorly. We'll look at that in just a second. Right now, though, I want to take you to Tennessee in the United States. A runaway pet zebra. Yes, a pet zebra. Apparently that's okay in Tennessee. His name is Ed. He's been recaptured. Ed was on the run for more than a week. He was captured by the Sheriff's Department and taken back home in a helicopter. Have a look.
There's a zebra in a bag.
Poor wee thing. Look at him. He's probably so dizzy. First of all, you've got to contend with the fact that your body's covered in stripes, which must be confusing when you look in the mirror, and then somebody's doing this to you. What we think. I don't know why. I don't know how or why you're allowed to have them as pets, but apparently this is okay. He was causing some trouble and he's been sorted out. Time now is 7 minutes after 8. You're on Herald Now. Here's weather.
Herald Now weather, brought to you by You Do It Kitchens.
Good morning. Many around the country waking to fog. It does clear. We have a narrow ridge of high pressure today, but this front will start to pass over the lower North Island, and the low out over the Tasman Sea is also approaching, but it stays west for now. So to the South Island, and fine and frosty or fine and foggy, cloud will start to creep in during the afternoon with mostly light winds. Cloud spreads to all here, then drizzle, then rain arriving tonight for everyone. Maybe a few heavy falls too for Nelson. Only 10 the high today for Christchurch. Many waking with frost this morning. It's not a bad start to the day, but cloud does increase and any showers will turn to rain tonight, possibly thundery too for Taranaki. It's a similar trend here with a fine morning, then cloud rolls in, turning to rain tonight. Thunderstorms possible for Tauranga, Tokoroa and also Rotorua. And rain spreads to all here from late morning. There could be more thunderstorms too, with hail, and the north or northeasterly wind will be gusty in those thunderstorms, potentially up to 100 k's for Auckland.
Thanks, Heather. Aucklanders will receive their new capital values or CVs from today after several delays. These are the valuations that set how much your rates will increase by, or they're used in the process of setting rates. Overall, property across the Auckland region has dropped by 9% and by up to 14% in some inner city fringe suburbs. Calvin Davidson is Chief Property Economist at Cotality NZ. He's with me this morning. Calvin, good morning.
Good morning.
So where are we looking at? Who's worst hit?
Well, it's early days in terms of the analysis. There's obviously a lot of suburbs, but it seems to be, I guess, your more expensive kind of central city suburbs, as you alluded to, that have seen the biggest falls in values. But I think really the key message here is that pretty much everybody's seen a fall in their CV between mid-21 and mid-24, just reflecting the timing when these CVs were taken. You know, if you think back to 2021, that's pretty much the peak. Mid-2024 was pretty much the trough. So I think if anybody's got away with a higher CV, I'd be pretty surprised.
Yeah, well, I think Great Barrier was looking pretty good, but may have been the only standout, Calvin. What about commercial versus residential? Do we know anything there yet?
I haven't seen any insight on commercial. No, we tend to look at the housing market, and so commercial is a little bit off to the side of what we do. But yeah, I mean, commercial, from what I understand, has probably held up a little bit better than residential. There's been a lot of money flowing to that sector, but yeah, no great insight into that. Sorry.
The sense is that the outer suburbs seem to be holding up in value better than the inner ones. Is that because the inner ones were probably more overvalued than the outer ones, or is this a change in working from home, and how do you explain all this?
Yeah, probably all of those things, really. I mean, one thing I'd say also is that affordability is part of it. If you think of sort of so-called outer suburbs, they're going to be a little bit cheaper. We've seen first-home buyer activity pretty strong in general across the housing market, but in more affordable areas, first-home buyers tend to be stronger. So that's perhaps held up values a little bit better, but keep in mind, we're talking about relatives here. I mean, everywhere's been pretty weak. So it's more a story here of which have fallen more than others. Really, that's the story. And so, where first-home buyer demand's pretty strong as part of it, but also, I guess we've seen a little bit, if you think about some of those inner city suburbs, apartments, a really dominant property type, they've perhaps been lagging a little bit behind too. So it might be buyer demand, sort of property type, a whole range of factors really.
And just to clarify, and this may not be one for you, but you may know the rates bill that we'll get. It's not like, because if your values drop, it doesn't mean your rate bill goes down, does it? It just means it increases at a slower rate than it otherwise would have.
Yeah, so pretty much if your CV fell, say 15%, you alluded to the average there was down about 9%. If your CV fell 15%, you're probably still going to see a rates bill increase, but it might just be smaller than others. If your CV fell 5%, you're going to see a rates bill increase, and it may well be a little bit bigger than others. So really this is set as at May 2024. It's a way of allocating rates across every home in Auckland, nothing more than that. And of course, keep in mind they're already a year old, so property values have shifted on since then. And just because you've had a piece of paper through the mail doesn't necessarily mean that your property is going to sell for any different than it might have done a week ago. So this is really about allocating rates. It's not necessarily about current market values.
Yeah, just something that we can have fun and obsess with for no apparent reason. Kelvin, I appreciate your time this morning as always. Kelvin Davidson, who is with us from Cotality NZ. He's the Chief Property Economist there. It is just gone 12 minutes after 8 o'clock. Right, we're getting to education now, and good news on this front.
Can I just log out now?
Kelvin, yes, thank you very much. Good to see you.
Cheers.
You are relieved. Appreciate you coming on the show. Right, good news on the education front. We have more teachers entering schools than in the past 20 years. The workforce has grown by 1,800 last year, which is the largest year-on-year increase since 2009, which is when the records began. Education Minister Erica Stanford joined Mike Hosking on the ZB Breakfast this morning. Started off by asking about the increase, and we will come back and bring you this story in a second. We also have Rawdon Christie and Louisa Wall on our panel this morning. All of this we'll get to straight after this.
Here she is. How's the business going?
Good, actually. We just switched to 2 degrees. Well, we tested the networks and couldn't see any difference, but 2 degrees has the most satisfied customers. With Flex, we get instant control of phone plans, data usage, and cost centre reporting. And they're the fastest growing business network.
Can I have what she's having?
I'm Hayden Scott, and I'm a knife maker. I make knives from my workshop at home in West Auckland. Yeah, my previous life I was a chef, did that for 25 years, but I had this knife making thing that I was doing and had been doing for some time, and so that transition from finishing that 25-year career and taking the plunge into full-time knife maker, I had been building up to that, but I still had to take a leap.
Welcome back, and returning to our story on education, just confirming our numbers out this morning, we've got more teachers entering schools than in the past 20 years. The workforce has grown by 1,800 last year, which is the largest year-on-year increase since 2009. 2009 is when the records began. The Education Minister, Erica Stanford, was with Hosk on ZB this morning. He started off by asking if this increase in staff is what the education sector needs.
Sort of what we need, and it is starting to plug a gap. And we're creating this world-leading education system people want to be a part of. We do have a shortage of primary and secondary school teachers, and I think that these numbers are starting to arrest that decline, and more people are wanting to get into education to change lives.
What's changed?
Well, there's a number of factors that have changed, but I mean, essentially, teachers want to go into teaching, right, to change lives, and we are helping them to do that. We've got a world-leading curriculum, all of the incredible resources for free that go along with it, all of this amazing world-leading professional learning and development, and just announced this huge learning support package, and that has certainly helped. Look, on top of that, we've invested really heavily into on-site training programs. We're paying teacher fees. There's a number of things that have gone into making this, a profession that people want to go into. And we're really focused on making sure that we're talking up how incredible it is to be a teacher and to change lives. But I think a big part of it is all of the resourcing that's going in at the moment.
What's the breakdown of locals v immigrants? And does it matter?
Look, I certainly want to grow our own. We know that last year we had a substantial increase, just over 6.3 3% increase in young people studying at initial teacher education. This year, this is just provisional figures, so far it's a 27% increase. So we are seeing more and more young people choosing to go into education and be part of this world-leading education system. But we are bolstering the numbers, of course, by overseas teachers, and we have to do that at the moment, and we probably will continue to need to do it into the future as well.
If you gave the numbers for the average income for a teacher, do you think most people like my good self would be surprised at the figures?
Well,
it's not bad dough, is it?
No, when I ask people what do you think it is, they always guess a lot lower, which I think is telling. But the numbers are, it is a tough job, and we do expect a huge amount of our teachers, and they are changing lives. And so we need to be making sure we're paying them more every single pay round, which we've committed to do. But I don't think most people do know what the average teacher is on.
94 for a primary teacher, average 101 for a secondary teacher, a principal at secondary $200,000. That's serious money.
Yeah, well, and they work extraordinarily hard for that, and they do an amazing job.
Good. Well, I'm glad we're getting somewhere. We're on a path here, Erica, do you think?
We are. And Mike, I've been overseas, and I have been, the ministers of education from all around the world come up to me. They know what we're doing. They're watching what we're doing. We are world leading in our curriculum and in our resourcing and our shifts in the way that we're teaching to the explicit structured learning. People are watching us. It is world leading, and it's exciting to be a part of.
That was Erica Stanford on ZB this morning. Of course, we'll have Erica Stanford on our regular Friday political panel here on Herald Now Friday morning with Willie Jackson. Now, we've already done that bit. Let's move on. Corruption. You can't corrupt me, but you can apparently corrupt a lot of border officials in New Zealand. New report out this morning painting quite a bleak picture of what the future could look like in terms of corruption. It's mainly organised crime, and it's mainly drugs that are coming in across the border, and it's mainly for the financial gain of these border agents, which is why they're being corrupted. Also in the last 24 hours, we've had the NZR CEO Mark Robinson standing down. Our panel this morning, Rawdon Christie, who is former broadcaster, of course, and communications and property expert, along with Lewis Wolf, former Labour MP and rugby player. Good morning.
Morena.
Good to have you guys here.
How are you, Ryan?
Really good, thank you. I thought I'd start, Lewis, since we have you here. I'd start with Mark Robinson. What did you make of the announcement and also what it might mean for the future of rugby?
Well, the announcement, I think he's been clear. He wants to be with his family in Australia. So we wish Mark all the best. He's done amazing work, just firstly for women's rugby, and I want to acknowledge that, but also obviously has steered us through tough times with COVID. What I make of it though is that we have had a New Zealand rugby CEO and a commercial rugby CEO, and going forward we need a CEO that can do both jobs. And so we need a skill set now that is able to negotiate our sponsorships, our television coverage. There's a men's player pathway on the table, so there are issues with the current structure. But at the heart of what Mark has done and bought has been the pride in wearing the black jersey, which we should always remember, and that focus on the grassroots. You know, it is that base of grassroots support that has always produced the best rugby players in the world.
Do you worry this idea that we go for a group CEO type model? Do you worry, and maybe we'll go international, maybe it won't even be somebody who has a rugby background? Does that concern you, or do you think?
No, it doesn't concern me, but I think that's what you're balancing, the local with the global, and an ability for somebody to make sure the infrastructure, which are the clubs, you know, the pathways from school, it is provincial unions, also can compete in that global market. And that we've seen some announcement recently about sponsorship deals, for example. And so there is an appeal, but that is the type of person we need who can bring the local and the global together, but unified in our continued love for the game. And for me, that's our biggest challenge, is there's been a decrease in the player base.
Yeah. Rawdon, is this a job for you?
So there's 15 on one side and 15 on the other side.
Roughly.
Oh, look, to me, it's a case you've got to protect the All Blacks brand because it's so valuable to us nationally. It's not about rugby that necessarily. That's much bigger than that. The grassroots challenges. We've got a lot of sports evolving in this country, which is attractive to young
boys and girls to play, and there's a lot of competition for their attention. So you've got to make it watchable and you've got to make it playable. And I think that's a focus that's obviously not going to be the focus of whatever new leader of New Zealand rugby or CEO takes, but that's just for the game globally, is they've got to pay attention to what it is which makes young people want to actually play and watch the game. But that's going slightly off track.
No, I think that's basically the gist of it, isn't it? I mean, that's the biggest challenge that the sport has, particularly in New Zealand right now, is just the number of young people who are wanting to play.
Exactly. It is the demand, and that's where the Black Ferns and our Black Fern Sevens have captured the hearts and imaginations of not only young women, but I also think young men, because of the brand of rugby they play, but also they're amazing role models.
That's the thing, isn't it? It's not necessarily the sport, it's that first attracts you to it. It's the personalities of the people that hook you in and get you playing. So, fascinating discussion. Now, on to another one, corruption. This morning we've had this report out that says, and we think of ourselves in New Zealand as kind of uncorrupt. You know, we're always up at the top of the corruption index, doing very well, quite proud of that, you know, looking down at all the other countries. We've slipped from first to fourth, which doesn't sound that bad. But we listened to the experts this morning on the show. They're saying, actually, we're going to keep sliding. And if you look at what happened to Australia, they're about 10 years ahead of us. And it's organised crime coming in and corrupting border officials, things like that. Rawdon, do you think we're maybe a little bit resting on our laurels?
I find it amazing when I read the stories of how these mass importation of drugs are getting through our borders, how Mickey Mouse some of the systems must be. It just amazes me when this is something so fundamentally important to us across every sector of society. How you hear about the guy passing the pass to his cousin who's driving the van through the gate at the back of the runway and he's round the corner and then he's taking the suitcase with the red X off. It just amazes me that there isn't a far, far greater and more robust security system at our borders. How do you resolve that? Do you make it more the responsibility of the people who are actually running those borders, be it the airport authority, be it the port? I think airports more so. But it's got to start with regulation, which then comes down to who are you employing to do the jobs. There are plenty of people who are looking for great jobs at the moment. So who are you getting in there to do the jobs? Are you vetting them properly? Are your systems robust enough to stop this? But it has to be an easier way to sort of rejig the entire system to keep us safer.
See, I wonder whether we actually are fooling ourselves here that we can stop illegal drugs from coming into New Zealand. And who has managed to do that? Name me one country. None. And we catch about 10% of what comes in.
But fundamentally, we need a strategy and we need a commission. So we should be replicating what Australia's doing, to be honest. This is where our closer relationship can play a part in what we do moving forward. I think the strategy should be led by the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet. And then I think, like you've said, Rawdon, we do need some legislation in place. And ironically, we've just had, foreign interference has been debated in the Parliament this year. But that's more from political actors coming in and undermining. But this is also undermining our democracy. So for me, I see both this corruption issue and the foreign interference issue as potentially one issue that we need regulation, as Rawdon has said. But we've been incredibly naive and we have rested on our laurels. And now that this panel has produced this evidence, we need a very swift response.
Okay, and led from the DPMC?
I would. And leverage off the Aussies. They're our mates.
Yeah, they've been there, done that, haven't
exactly. And the other issue is what's happening through the Pacific.
Yeah, which we haven't even got to yet, but we will return with our panel in just a few moments, 26 after 8 here on Herald Now.
Maximising productivity, what have you got?
Well, if we switch to 2 degrees, with Flex for Business, we can instantly manage data usage, employee mobile plans, and cost centre reporting, saving us time and money. Cool. I'll get onto that then.
hip-hop and R&B. Flavour.
After 20 seasons on the footy field, it's fair to say I know a thing or two about resilience. Digging deep when the going gets tough. Just like Kaiwaka wet weather gear. Kaiwaka's been in the game for 200 seasons. 50 years of facing up to the elements, getting the job done, and coming back for more. And that's guaranteed for a lifetime. Kaiwaka, designed to perform, made to outlast.
When building for investment, it's important to find a team that you can trust.
We decided to build with GGs because they're good quality that they always provide us.
They've helped us throughout the whole process of getting the resource consent to the building consent, and their contracts are very easy to understand. We have built 4 houses with GG Gardeners, and it's just easier every time we work with them.
I'll definitely recommend GGs to all of my friends and family.
If you're thinking of building, choose the builder you'll want to build with time and time again.
Welcome back to our Herald Now panel for this morning. Former MP, Labour MP Lewis Wall and Rawdon Christie, who is former broadcaster. You do obviously have new jobs, but I just keep calling you by your old ones. Thank you for being with us this morning. AI, speaking of what will probably put me out of a job one day, AI, generative AI, lots of new stuff you can do with it. This morning we were talking about tax returns. It's not only can it do your tax return, but it can fake a receipt for you as well, so you can cheat on your tax returns. Rawdon, do you use...
Yep, every day.
What do you use it for?
Well, last night I used it for, and I was asked, what's your title for this morning's show? And I thought... So I genuinely run all these issues and problems and dilemmas and sort of anything to do with words and scripts, I'll run through some sort of chat GPT, because I do a lot of marketing and a lot of advertising, writing adverts and things. And so I did. I said, what should I call myself as a former broadcaster who's now working in real estate and does some media commentary? And it came up with a list of options, and from broadcasting veteran to, I don't know, God knows what else, but we're not using any. We're still just saying former broadcaster. But on a serious note, I use it every day for work. I think we all use it every day. When we do a Google search now, it's always AI. Mm-hmm. I use it to profile potential clients before I meet them, so I know what sort of personalities I may be coming up against. I'd certainly use it to soften, maybe if I've written a passionate email or letter, I run it through AI and say,
really?
Please give me a more professional...
You're using it too, look, you're nodding.
Yeah, I use
every
it
day.
too, in exactly the same way. I'll write an email and then I'll ask for an edit, and it's really interesting because you can have different tones. More relaxed or formal.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you do you not worry that you're putting presumably private information into this machine?
No, because I'm always polite. I always say, hi, please could you help me? And here's a question, how many people are asking this machine politely to help them? I mean, it's ludicrous. But I've talked to people about it and they say, well, you just don't know if the people are profiling your personality based on how you're talking to the machine.
I always say please, but I'll say please edit this and am I missing anything? But the issue is you can't just say write this letter. You have to write it, and for me they edit what you do. And yes, it does depend on the pitch and the tone, as you would imagine, is for the recipient could be quite vital.
Yeah, because sometimes, I don't know, I would worry about I'd just worry what it would do with all the information that you give it, you know?
I sort of guess that I'm such a tiny speck in the mountain of life that my information's irrelevant. I mean, but I've used it. I've written a song with it, terrible song. I've written a book, all AI, terrible. No one else has ever read it. But it's fun playing with the amount of information we have access to at the press of a button.
Yeah.
As Lewis has said, though, the key, on a serious note, is you've got to train it, and you've got to give it information, and then it will gradually. I mean, it knows my writing style now. So when I'm working on an advertising script for a property, it knows the type of style I want to reach.
Crazy. Maybe I should do it.
Why not?
This show could be so much better.
You could lie in bed all morning. It could be a virtual Ryan.
Hey guys, thanks so much for coming in. Great to see you both.
Thank you. Can I just say well done? You're being awesome.
Agreed.
Oh, thanks guys. Appreciate that. That's Lewis Wall, former MP and Silver Fern. There we are, still by. Oh, here's your one. Rawdon Christie, communications and property expert.
Oh, there you
Thank
go.
you, GPT,
Thanks,
ChatGPT. 29 away from 9. Here's News with Neva.
Herald Now News, powered by News Talk ZB.
Experts are urging the government to take immediate action against corruption from organised crime. An independent advisory panel says New Zealand is naive to the threat of corruption and must act to protect its reputation. In a new report to Customs and Associate Police Minister Casey Costello, it lays out several recommendations. It includes establishing a central authority to investigate corruption, modernising laws, longer prison sentences, and stronger vetting of employees in high-risk industries. The government's pumping more funding into tourism marketing, with a goal of generating an extra $300 million in spending. Minister Louise Upston's announced a $13.5 million injection into Tourism New Zealand, targeting Australia, the US and China. It's expected to bring an extra 72,000 visitors over coming years. Rotorua Mayor Tanya Tapsell told Ryan Bridge the spending goal's easily achievable.
Chinese visitors, their average spend is $6,000 when they do come here. That's why they are a target market for us. They're very high spenders.
More people are dipping into their Kiwi Saver accounts for financial hardship reasons. Inland revenue figures show more than 44,000 people withdrew money between July 2024 and April 2025. That's compared to about 32,000 in the previous financial year. Financial mentor David Very says while it should be a last resort, about half the people he talks to want to do a Kiwi Saver hardship withdrawal. Deportation protests in Los Angeles are dispersing after 3 days of violent unrest. City and state leaders are accusing Donald Trump of deliberately inflaming tensions after he deployed the National Guard to fire tear gas and rubber bullets at demonstrators. At least 56 people have been arrested. Australian Channel 9 journalist Lauren Tomasi was caught in the crossfire, shot with a rubber bullet on air.
Firing rubber bullets at protesters, moving them on through the heart of LA.
You just shut the fuck up! You okay?
Tomasi was not seriously hurt. A renewed call for people to vaccinate as the cold weather brings forth a range of infectious diseases. The national rate for acute respiratory illness infections climbed to 21 per 100,000 people in the week ending June 1st. Vaccinologist Dr. Helen Patousas-Harris says flu, COVID-19 and whooping cough are all in the air right now. She says pneumococcal is also one to watch for.
It gets very chummy with the influenza virus. So influenza viruses can actually predispose people from getting very ill, for example, with severe pneumonias and things.
From today, Aucklanders can begin checking out their council property valuations. New capital values are being issued this week for 630,000 properties across the region. On average, home values dropped 9% from CVs released in 2021.
Herald NOW Sport, brought to you by Gold Sport.
Canterbury have beaten Parramatta 30-12 in League's NRL to return to the top of the ladder. The Magic have defeated the Stars 71-54 to complete round 5 of netball's ANZ Premiership. Usman Khawaja believes Marnus Labuschagne can don the pads first in Australia's World Test Championship cricket final, starting tomorrow against South Africa at Lords, despite once claiming he had opening-itis.
You're watching Herald Now. Time is 25 minutes away from 9 o'clock. We're going to talk Kiwi Saver and the number of people that are withdrawing money from their Kiwi Saver now. What impact will that have on them in the future? Obviously, it's because it needs to happen now, but what impact does it have on their future and how many are doing it? We'll look at that in just a second. Also this morning, this is from yesterday from Stats NZ, but interesting numbers on our economy, because next week we're going to get our Quarter 1 2025 GDP data, and this is data from business financial statements for sales, purchases, salary, wages, profit, a whole bunch of stuff from Quarter 1 2025, and it's quite interesting because it will feed into the GDP number that we get next week. Sales were $190 billion. This is versus 2024. That is up 3.3%. Purchases were up 3.6%. Salaries and wages down 1.2%. Operating profit was up 8%. And it's interesting when you look at the particular industries. So 13 of 14 industries that the classification measures went up. Manufacturing went up 5.1%. That's for the quarter, and 10% for the year, an annual change. Unsurprisingly, construction down 3 year-on-year, up 1.7 for the quarter. Retail, trade and accommodation up 1.5 for the quarter and 1.3 for the year. Those things you would expect, but the manufacturing thing seems particularly strong. We will bring you that, of course, GDP number, which is coming out next week on Thursday. It's 23.29.
Herald Now weather, brought to you by You Do It Kitchens.
Good morning. Many around the country waking to fog. It does clear. We have a narrow ridge of high pressure today, but this front will start to pass over the lower North Island, and the low out over the Tasman Sea is also approaching, but it stays west for now. So to the South Island, and fine and frosty or fine and foggy, cloud will start to creep in during the afternoon with mostly light winds. Cloud spreads to all here, then drizzle, then rain arriving tonight for everyone. Maybe a few heavy falls too for Nelson. Only 10 the high today for Christchurch. Many waking with frost this morning. It's not a bad start to the day, but cloud does increase and any showers will turn to rain tonight, possibly thundery too for Taranaki. It's a similar trend here with a fine morning, then cloud rolls in, turning to rain tonight. Thunderstorms possible for Tauranga, Tokoroa and also Rotorua. And rain spreads to all here from late morning. There could be more thunderstorms too, with hail, and the north or northeasterly wind will be gusty in those thunderstorms, potentially up to 100 k's for Auckland.
Thanks for watching. It's 22 away from 9. Kiwi Saver hardship withdrawals are reaching new highs. Both the number of Kiwis making withdrawals and the amount taken out. If we keep calling Kiwis in a story about Kiwi Saver, it's going to get confusing. Both the number of people making withdrawals and the amount taken out have smashed last year's figures within just 10 months. David Callanan is the General Manager of Corporate Trustee Services at Public Trust and is with me this morning. David, good morning.
Thanks for having me, Ryan.
Good to have you here. Give us the numbers.
Well, already year to date, we've had over 40,000 Kiwi Saver hardship withdrawals. And when I say year to date, that's from 1 July through to the end of April. Now, if we were to annualise those figures, we'd be beyond 50,000 Kiwi who are borrowing from their future self, and that's a significant uplift. So if we were to wind back just probably 2 or 3 years, that's more than double the number that used to be withdrawing due to hardship.
Right.
So we used to see in the industry something in the region of 20,000 per year, 10 to 20,000, and now we're seeing over 50,000.
It has to be quite a serious situation to actually meet the threshold for withdrawal, right?
It's
not just you can't afford to go out for a nice meal once a week.
No, it's quite the requirements are actually quite strict. So you really need to be going backwards every week. And the idea of the hardship withdrawal process is that we're getting you back on your feet for a period of time, just so that you can get things back on track. So a payment, a withdrawal payment, will generally equate to about 13 weeks of living expenses, so like a quarter. What that actually means in practice, we end up getting quite a few that come back. So you get multiple withdrawals within a year.
Right.
So at the moment, I mentioned 50,000, so that's about 2%. If you were to think about 2 to 3% of New Zealand's population. But in terms of actual numbers of Kiwi who are withdrawing, it's about 1.2%. So you can see that there's quite a few coming back and having to dip multiple times.
And what is, particularly if you're doing the double dipping, what impact does it have on retirement? I mean, obviously there's going to be less there, but do we know how big the hole might be?
Yeah, well, I mean, the power of compounding interest and investment is significant. So, if you're reducing your contributions by 20,000 now, your balance by 20,000 now, if you go forward 20, 25 years, that's worth 75,000.
Mm-hmm.
So that's significant impact on your retirement. And let's not forget, Kiwi Saver's primary purpose is about retirement savings. This is a fallback opportunity. If you're finding yourself unable to make ends meet, then it's great that you've got that fallback opportunity. But really, we want to be looking after our future selves when you're unable to work.
And what about the recent changes that we had in the budget from the government, both around the government contribution, but also the change to the employee and the employer contribution? Is that, do you think, going to have any impact on Kiwi Saver? Will we see fewer people contributing to Kiwi Saver, or will we see the need for more withdrawals?
Yeah, so it's a pretty complex issue. There's quite a few moving factors there. I think I'm really pleased to see the contribution levels increase, so I think it's really positive, largely because getting those balances up, getting contribution levels up will mean that balances can get up. And in the long run, that's good for New Zealand. We've got more money in the Kiwi Saver funds. They can be invested in New Zealand businesses over time as well. And just at an individual level, you're better able to be prepared for your retirement. Also, it means that the economy's more able to navigate because we don't need to rely so much on the NZ Super Fund, right? We know that in the next decade we're going to start drawing down from that NZ Super Fund, and that's that's a big backstop for the economy as well. That will start to be a burden for taxpayers once that starts to be whittled away. So it's important we get the balances up for the economy. The important thing right now, one of the drivers for the number of withdrawal applications that we're getting is the state of the economy. So the increase in inflation over the last few years, the turning point we saw with the volumes has been since early 2023. And that came about largely due to gradual increase in unemployment. So unemployment right now is running at about 5%. It's the highest it's been since the middle of COVID. And the mortgage arrears, we're seeing the highest levels in 8 years of people unable to pay their mortgages.
Yeah.
So getting all of those settings right by the government is a big challenge. Kiwi Saver's there for withdrawal application as a backstop, but we want to be stopping, that's the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. We want to be stopping people with a fence at the top.
You need a strong economy to do that first
and
foremost, don't you? Hey, thanks so much for coming on the show. Great to have you.
Thanks, Ryan.
That's David Callanan. He's with Public Trust. It is 17 minutes away from 9 o'clock now. Coming up next, Lorna Riley from the Trip Notes podcast is in to talk travel, and the world's busiest airport is set to shut down, but don't worry, it'll be back. We'll reveal which one in a second.
Oh. Yeah, do what I want. Yeah, can't get enough. Yeah, do what I want. Still can't get enough. Yeah, do what I want. Yeah, can't get enough. Yeah, do what I want. Still can't get enough. Yeah, do what I want. Yeah, can't get enough. Yeah, do what I want. Still can't get enough. Yeah, do what I want. Yeah, can't get enough. Still can't get enough.
Ah, here she is. How's the business going?
Good, actually. We just switched to 2 degrees. Well, we tested the networks and couldn't see any difference. But 2 degrees has the most satisfied customers. With Flex, we get instant control of phone plans, data usage, and cost centre reporting. And they're the fastest growing business network.
Can I have what she's having?
I'm Hayden Scott, and I'm a knife maker. I make knives from my workshop at home in West Auckland. Yeah, my previous life I was a chef, did that for 25 years, but I had this knife making thing that I was doing and had been doing for some time, and so that transition from finishing that 25-year career and taking the plunge into full-time knife maker, I had been building up to that, but I still had to take a leap.
You're watching Herald Now. It's 14 minutes away from 9 o'clock. Tuesday, which means travel, which means Lorna Riley from the Trip Notes podcast is with us. The world's busiest airport is set to get shut down. That sounds dramatic, but maybe it's not quite so. Lorna, good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see you.
Thank you. Yeah, Dubai International Airport, DXB. A lot of Kiwis have been through there. It's kind of gateway to Europe. Some people stop off and spend a couple of days in Dubai, which is an amazing place. It is the world's busiest with 92.3 million passengers through last year. Wow. But the problem is they can't expand because they're constrained by neighbourhoods and 2 big superhighways, so they can't get any bigger. So they have a cargo airport, which is about 60 k's away in the desert, called DWC, and they're going to expand that in a $35 billion project. So At the moment, DXB has 2 parallel runways. This new one's going to have 5. It's going to have 400 airport gates. It won't open until 2032, so we'll still go through DXB for the time being. But after 2032, we'll be going through DWC. And when it's finished, it's going to be able to hold 260 million passengers every year, so 2.5 times.
Whoa, they're
the
more than
capacity
doubling.
Now. Yep. It's going to be absolutely enormous.
And you reckon, so they reckon 35 billion and finish by 2032?
It's going to open in 2032, but the expansion continues into the 2050s.
Ah, okay. That's impressive. I mean,
Yeah.
they if anyone can do it, they can do it.
If I'm still travelling in the 2050s, I'll be happy.
All right, let's talk about Google, because they're turning 20, and that means 20 years of Google reviews.
Yeah.
You've looked into our tourist destinations.
I have. So Google Maps have looked at the top Kiwi attractions, and the top 3, maybe surprisingly, all in the North Island. So coming in at number 3, you've got the Redwoods Treetop Walk in Rotorua. Have you done that?
No.
Pretty stunning.
It's on my list.
Do it at night. Absolutely amazing.
Is Hobbiton on there?
Hold your horses.
Oh.
That comes in with 11,000 reviews. Number 2, also slightly oddly, I think, is Auckland's Sky Tower. That has had more than 18,000 reviews. I guess a lot of visitors come into Auckland and don't go anywhere else.
Because the reviews aren't necessarily good.
No, although these are all pretty favourable.
Are they?
Yep.
But it's more about the quantity that you're talking about.
How many people go there.
Because probably there will be a lot of people that go up the Sky Tower just by virtue of them being here.
Yeah, but they like something like a 4.8 rating, which is pretty high out of 5. But yes, topping the list is Hobbiton in Matamata. It is, of course, the world's largest purpose-built film set. More than 20,000 reviews, an average rating of 4.76. Our top attraction, and I've never been there. Have you?
No, I've never been there either. Isn't that terrible?
Well, go and leave a review.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool to hear, and interesting that they're all in the North Island.
Yes.
I guess that is a numbers game, isn't it, when you think about where people filter through. Right, one of the great walks, this is the Tongariro Northern Circuit.
Yes, still North Island. Sorry about that. I will try and get some South Island stuff in next week.
Next week. But there was news this week about one of the huts being out of commission.
Yeah, so Otoriri Hut is a 26-bunk hut sort of in the middle of the Great Northern Circuit, and it is just so dilapidated, they've got to close it. So you won't be able to book that this season. You will be able to book the other huts. The bookings open in July, but without stopping at Otoriri, it is a 20k walk. It's really rough terrain. The weather is incredibly changeable. So they're saying anyone who wants to do that should be experienced backcountry trampers. So that rules me out. I'm just a day hiker.
Yeah, that rules me out too. You've got to be fit as a fiddle and kind of know what you're doing.
Yeah.
All right, let's stay home. Lorna, thank you for that. That's Lorna talking about Dubai Airport, dock huts, and your best or most reviewed travel destinations in New Zealand. That's Lorna Riley, the Trip Notes podcast host. Earlier, we spoke to Vasyl Mironchenko. He's the Ukrainian ambassador to Australia and New Zealand. I started by asking him for his reaction to pictures from overnight showing prisoner of war exchanges between the Ukraine and Russia.
Look, it's extremely relieving to see Ukrainian soldiers being released. As you know, Russians also keeping lots of civilians who they just grabbed and put them in jails. So certainly a swap of them in a humanitarian kind of mission is a good step forward.
They don't look particularly healthy though, do they? That's one of the first things I noticed when I was watching that.
Well, imagine being there for a year.
Yeah. What does this tell us? I mean, it's something. It's obviously not a ceasefire. It's not a peace deal, but it's something. Does it give you hope at all?
No, it doesn't, because it doesn't look like there is a ceasefire or there might be a ceasefire. We have accepted the proposal from President Donald Trump for a ceasefire on the 11th of March, and we have offered that to Russia, and they haven't accepted that. 2 months later, they've just sent more missiles, they've just sent more drones to kill more Ukrainians, to destroy more infrastructure. So Russians are pretending they're negotiating, but they are not. They're just imitating that. They believe the time is on their side. They're now advancing or trying to advance, looking for a breakthrough in different parts of Ukraine. So only unity in strength, only pressure, only further isolation of Russia can force them into negotiating in good faith.
Is Europe holding up its end of the bargain on that front? And New Zealand was part of this, reportedly part of this coalition that was coming together to try and force Russia's hand. How successful is that? clearly not very.
It's actually the involvement of the US which is crucial in this. So we need to make sure that US is involved, Europe is involved, New Zealand, Australia are involved. Coalition of the Willing is a very important mechanism of a potential deployment of troops as peacekeeping missions. But for the time being, while the war is in full speed, it's kind of difficult to even talk about it because we can't have a framework unless we have a ceasefire.
Ceasefire first. So what about the role of China in all of this? I've spoken to a couple of experts over the last couple of weeks who say the one guy who could probably call this off tomorrow would be Xi Jinping. Do you agree with that?
100%.
So what do we do about that? And what about New Zealand's pressure on China, of which there's been, as far as I'm aware, none?
Look, China is a superpower, and China is the biggest military in the region. It's the biggest economy in the region, and everybody depends on China. Ukraine is interested in engaging with China at a great extent. They're buying lots of our iron ore, they buy our grain, we buy fertilizer, we buy other products, so we are trading with China. We've seen recently the Chinese citizens there. But at the same time, we see Xi Jinping going to Moscow to support Putin. We see basically dependence of Russia on the Chinese market, on the supplies of the parts for the defense industry. So and China is benefiting from this war from a geopolitical view because Russia is getting weak. They've asserted themselves in Central Asia. And of course, China could play a bigger role in this whole thing, certainly.
Okay, what about, and presumably some pressure from little old New Zealand could help on that front. What about the taking the war further inside Russia, as Ukraine has been doing quite successfully of late? Do you think we will see more of that, like the drone strikes on the carriers?
Asymmetric warfare is what our intelligence agencies are now very good at, and probably the best in the world. And by the way, this is something that I brought here to New Zealand this time. While we still need your support on a humanitarian side, on military equipment side, or training, but now actually there's a lot we can share with your intelligence agencies. We can make them more prepared for any kind of conflict. We can, beef up your defense. And actually, we're now the #1 producer of drones in the world, which probably you may buy to actually improve your own capabilities. And the way we deploy those drones, actually underwater, above the ground. Just recently, we had this Ukrainian underwater drone which went into the Russian Black Sea port, and from underwater, the drone has shot down a fighter jet.
So you're here not so much to ask for more diplomatic support, but to do some defence deals potentially.
I'm here to engage with government and politicians and business people. I'm here to promote, facilitate cooperation, and I think defense industry, or generally defense cooperation, is one of those. And look, there's so much at stake for New Zealand the way this war is going to play out. You have to remember that Russia is a permanent member of the UN Security Council. It has nuclear weapons. So if Russians can do what they've done, why other nuclear countries can't do what Russia did?
Including China, perhaps in Taiwan. Appreciate you coming on the program this morning.
Thanks for having me.
That was Vasyl Miroshnichenko. He's the Ukrainian ambassador to New Zealand and Australia and was in the studio with me a little earlier this morning. Right, it is just gone 5 away from 9 o'clock. A new survey revealing Kiwis want harsher penalties for drink drivers, and the alcohol industry actually agrees with this. To unpack, we've got Chelsea Daniels, the Front Page Podcast. Good morning, Chelsea.
Morning.
Who's doing the survey?
So it was the New Zealand Alcohol Beverages Council. It's the 6th year that they've done it. They've surveyed 1,000 Kiwis, and the results show that there's agreement across the board, basically, that penalties for drink drivers could be and should be harsher. So 79% of those surveyed support confiscating cars from drink drivers, 59% want heavier fines for drunken disorderly behaviour, and 54% want to use those alcohol interlocks in cars to reduce drink driving. Those are the ones that you blow into and then it's attached to your engine. Your car doesn't start if it detects alcohol. So I spoke to the Executive Director, Virginia Nichols, on the Front Page this morning, and she says the industry supports these targeted interventions. So the alcohol interlocks, for example, they have to be court mandated. Well, they don't have to be, but they are. And that's increased from 262 back in 2015 up to nearly 4,000 last year. Wow. So they are making good use of them, but she says it's scratching the surface. They probably should be more.
All right. So we had Julie Christie on our panel on the show yesterday, and she has a friend in LA. This sounds very secondhand, but she has a friend in LA
Friend of a friend.
who got done for drink driving, and she had to attend 10 AA meetings and live view an autopsy
Oh my.
as part of her punishment. I mean, isn't that crazy? But you think about what message that sends to people and how serious it makes the offence. It would be sort of a different experience, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and I mean the fines are especially for low-level drink driving charges here. I mean, you look at somewhere like New South Wales, for example, and the minimum starts off at about $600 fine and 3 months loss of licence. Whereas this is a similar situation in New Zealand. The AA looked at this a few years ago. Similar situation would be a $200 fine and 50 demerit points here. So straight off the bat, we're a lot less harsh than other countries.
A lot looser.
A lot looser.
With our rules and regulations. Chelsea, looking forward to today's one. That sounds good. Appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
Chelsea Daniels, host of the Front Page podcast. You can catch it on all your podcast stores, wherever you get your podcasts, wherever you download them, and iHeartRadio, importantly, is where you can listen to it the most. It is 3 minutes away from 9 o'clock now. Time to talk business, thanks to our partners 2 Degrees. Two big, home builders have struck a deal with Auckland Council to sign off their own work. It's a trial to see if they can cut inspection costs while keeping to the building code. Earlier, I spoke with Business Desk's Garth Bray. I started off by asking, who are we talking about here and who would sign off on their own work? Apologies, we seem to be having some problems with our audio there. Normally I do like listening to Garth. I didn't turn that off myself, I promise. It's 2 minutes away from 9 o'clock. We'll bring you that when we can. Right now we're going to Katie Oliver, who's our Herald NOW reporter, who's standing by. Katie, good morning.
Good morning.
First off, you've got some breaking news for us this morning. A person has died after being hit by a vehicle. This is in Roxburgh in central Otago.
Yes, so police confirmed today that a person has died following the incident that happened last night just after 7 p.m. Now, they said the person did unfortunately die at the scene despite efforts from emergency services there, but there'll be more on that on the website as the day goes on.
All right, that's nzherald.co.nz, of course, and the fatal house fire in Upper Hutt. We've got a couple of developing stories this
Yeah, unfortunately a person has died following a fatal house fire, obviously, as you say, in Upper Hutt. Now, emergency services, fire and emergency services rather, did confirm with our Herald breaking news reporter Rachel Mayer this morning that a body was found at the fire in Upper Hutt. So they were called to the Trentham suburb in Wellington just after 2 a.m. this morning, and the investigators will be on the scene as the day goes on to try and establish what caused the fire.
Okay, and to finish this morning, you've got a story about the crews who are working busy to keep us all going during the weather woes.
Yeah, so when weather hits the fan, like it does often recently, we've had a lot of wild weather, we all hunker down, but we've got our linesmen and we've got our fire crews and emergency services, that's when they buckle up and that's when they keep the world turning. So on the Up, there's an article out today. Now that is by Michaela Gower, and you can check that out, and she is talking about Hamish Ware, who is a Hawke's Bay linesman who employs 200 people in Hawke's Bay and works hard to make sure that people have power.
Very important thing to have.
Yeah.
Katie, thank you very much. Katie Oliver from Herald Now. It is 9 o'clock. Here's Neva with news headlines.
Herald Now News, powered by News Talk ZB.
Experts are urging the government to take immediate action against corruption from organised crime. An independent advisory panel says New Zealand is naive to the threat of corruption and must act to protect its reputation. In a new report to Customs and Associate Police Minister Casey Costello, it lays out several recommendations. It includes establishing a central authority to investigate corruption, modernising laws, longer prison sentences, and stronger vetting of employees in high-risk industries. The government's pumping more funding into tourism marketing with a goal of generating an extra $300 million in spending. Minister Louise Upston's announced a $13.5 million injection into Tourism New Zealand, targeting Australia, the US and China. It's expected to bring an extra 72,000 visitors over coming years. Rotorua Mayor Tanya Tapsell told Ryan Bridge the spending goal's easily achievable.
Chinese visitors, their average spend is $6,000 when they do come here. That's why they are a target market for us. They're very high spenders.
More people are dipping into their Kiwi Saver accounts for financial hardship reasons. Inland revenue figures show more than 44,000 people withdrew money between July 2024 and April 2025. That's compared to about 32,000 in the previous financial year. Financial mentor David Very says while it should be a last resort, about half the people he talks to want to do a Kiwi Saver hardship withdrawal. Deportation protests in Los Angeles are dispersing after 3 days of violent unrest. City and state leaders are accusing Donald Trump of deliberately inflaming tensions after he deployed the National Guard to fire tear gas and rubber bullets at demonstrators. At least 56 people have been arrested. Australian Channel 9 journalist Lauren Tomasi was caught in the crossfire, shot with a rubber bullet on air.
Firing rubber bullets at protesters, moving them on through the heart of LA.
You just shut the fuck up. You okay?
Tomasi was not seriously hurt. A renewed call for people to vaccinate as the cold weather brings forth a range of infectious diseases. The national rate for acute respiratory illness infections climbed to 21 per 100,000 people in the week ending June 1st. Vaccinologist Dr. Helen Patoussis-Harris says flu, COVID-19 and whooping cough are all in the air right now. She says pneumococcal is also one to watch for.
It gets very chummy with the influenza virus. So influenza viruses can actually predispose people from getting very ill, for example, with severe pneumonias and things.
From today, Aucklanders can begin checking out their council property valuations. New capital values are being issued this week for 630,000 properties across the region. On average, home values dropped 9% from CVs released in 2021.
Herald NOW Sport, brought to you by Gold Sport.
Canterbury have beaten Parramatta 30-12 in League's NRL to return to the top of the ladder. The Magic have defeated the Stars 71-54 to complete round 5 of netball's ANZ Premiership. Usman Khawaja believes Marnus Labuschagne can don the pads first in Australia's World Test Championship cricket final, starting tomorrow against South Africa at Lords, despite once claiming he had opening-itis.
Herald NOW Weather, brought to you by You Do It Kitchens.
Good morning. Many around the country waking to fog. It does clear. We have a narrow ridge of high pressure today, but this front will start to pass over the lower North Island, and the low out over the Tasman Sea is also approaching, but it stays west for now. So to the South Island, and fine and frosty or fine and foggy, cloud will start to creep in during the afternoon with mostly light winds. Cloud spreads to all here, then drizzle, then rain arriving tonight for everyone. Maybe a few heavy falls too for Nelson. Only 10 the high today for Christchurch. Many waking with frost this morning. It's not a bad start to the day, but cloud does increase and any showers will turn to rain tonight, possibly thundery too for Taranaki. It's a similar trend here with a fine morning, then cloud rolls in, turning to rain tonight. Thunderstorms possible for Tauranga, Tokoroa and also Rotorua. And rain spreads to all here from late morning. There could be more thunderstorms too, with hail, and the north or northeasterly wind will be gusty in those thunderstorms, potentially up to 100 k's for Auckland.
And Neva for the news as well. That's it for us for this morning. We'll be back tomorrow, of course. You can watch us nzherald.co.nz. You can watch us on our YouTube channel as well. Don't forget to tell your friends. Quick thank you to our partners this morning, Forsyth Bar, You Do It, Barkers, 2 Degrees, GJ Gardner and Noel Lemming. We couldn't do it without them. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Ryan Bridge. See you tomorrow.